Yay.
Yay. I know. I don't know why I do a little dance every time I start.
A
I just
little
get
like,
happy. Yeah, just a little wiggle. Just a little wiggle. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here with me and Ayanna Sealey. As you can see, we're already having a good time.
yes.
Ayanna, thank you so much for being here with
Thank
us.
you. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yes, and we are going to have a discussion today about mental toughness, mental performance. Ayanna is a mental performance coach, and I think it's something that's an important conversation for us, especially in the space of career and work and personal development, of course. But from a health perspective, I'm interested in hearing more
Mhm.
about that, especially with all of the mental things that
Mhm.
we've all been through. I don't even know how to describe it. I was going to say anxiety, stress. I mean, just we've all been through a lot of uncertainty over the
Yeah.
past year. So
Yes.
I'm excited to chat about that. So thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Of course. So, everyone, I want to tell you a little bit about Ayanna, then we'll jump right in. So, Ayanna Sealey is a mental performance coach who incorporates her unique experience as a Broadway performer and her master's in performance psychology to help artists, high level executives, and athletes realize their potential and achieve peak performance. Ayanna has danced for over 30 years. Wait a minute. Let me go back over here. Over 30. Let me look at this. That has to be a typo. We're gonna fix that later. It says here, though, that Ayanna has danced for over 30 years, training at the Albert Ailey School in New York City and performing on Broadway as a triple threat dancer, actor, and singer in Toronto. And it was in the Disney's Lion King and the Stratford Shakespearean Festival. Ayanna imparts her personal experience becoming a world renowned performer despite an ongoing battle with, now, how do I pronounce this properly? Lymphedema?
Lymphedema. Yep.
To help others actualize their own potential. So, through her acclaimed neuroemotional technique, Ayanna helps clients identify and release subconscious blocks within minutes, a practice that would take traditional talk therapy years to achieve. Very interested in that.
Hmm.
After coaching throughout New York, London, Zurich, Geneva, and Mexico, Ayanna launched Magic Makers Inc. in 2020, a one on one and group coaching program designed to help leaders rebuild confidence, regain power, and unlock their full potential. And Ayanna, I know you've worked with executives at different corporations as well, in addition to your
Hmm.
one-on-one and group coaching, right?
Yes, 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 I have. It's
Absolutely.
yeah. No, it's when I was embarking on that part of my journey, it was interesting to see how, my performing arts background tied in with the way athletes perform, the way executives will have to be called on to perform in the boardroom or giving presentations and different things like that. It's the same sort of modality, just different arenas. So that really excited me to bring what I learned from being on stage to, different arenas. So that was,
Yeah, so maybe let's start there. What are the ways that you found that those things kind of intertwine? What are some of the similarities that we might not be aware of?
yeah. So, I mean, it was interesting because I was watching a baseball game and I was noticing that one week a player would be, hitting out the ballpark, and the next week he couldn't hit for anything.
Mm.
And as I started to I realized it's the same thing. If you're not mentally where you need to be, nothing can be wrong physically, but you just won't perform to your best, right? At your very best. And I noticed, I was like, this is how it is for on stage. This is probably how it is for executives. So it's all about being primed optimally in your mind, in your mindset, your thoughts, the kind of things you focus on. Are you focusing on all the things that can go wrong? Are you pouring your energy into what can go right? Because at the end of the day, we have no control over what can happen. We've all seen big performers fall on stage, or we've all given a speech and messed up a word, or whatever the case is. And so things are going to go wrong, but it's up to us to choose what we can have control over. And what we can have control over is what we actually focus on, right? Which often gives you a better chance of things going well, right? So these are some of the ways that I see the three sort of areas of my interest. Although mental performance coaching can be for anything. It could be for a mom who's just trying to figure out her way, like wearing different hats. How do I manage? How do I balance? How do I deal with burnout? It can be for anyone, but this just happens to be where I sort of focus my energy at the
Yeah, and it's so interesting. And we have a couple of people watching. Stephanie Holland said, "Thank you for being here." Hi, Stephanie. And
time.
Marlon gave us praise hands and a Thank
Amen.
you, Marlon. So I hear a little bit of a beautiful accent. Where are you from originally, Ayanna?
Yes. I grew up in Trinidad and Tobago.
I knew you were gonna. Okay, Marlon. There you go.
Yeah.
Trinidad. I think
Oh,
Marlon
it's
is from Trinidad. Yes.
nice, nice, nice.
Excellent. Oh,
Yes,
beautiful.
yes,
So
yes.
it's so interesting as you were talking about this the way the two weave it, and I got the way the two, excuse me, different areas or several different areas weave together, and it's interesting because right away I love basketball. I thought about basketball players who they're a great player,
Yeah,
obviously the game, but then you watch some games some nights and they people just say it's an off game. They had an off game. It's like
absolutely.
it's not like all of a sudden they forgot their skills and those kinds of things. So might
Absolutely.
that be a case where it's something within their mind that's going on that could be blocking them?
100%. And one of my favorite things to do with my husband is sit and analyze because we watch a lot of basketball as well.
Mhm,
And I also worked in Toronto with the Ontario, like our provincial basketball team.
mhm,
So I have some experience with that as well. And it is fascinating. If you are having, we talk about the wellness part of mental health and how that affects you in terms of your performance. And if you've got stuff going on personally, if you've got any angst or anxiety, if even if you've gotten a new players who get a big contract and then
right.
suddenly they're not performing anymore, like it's all mental, like nothing's changed, but it's all about how you are perceiving life, the world, your game, where you fit into all of that. And so yeah, with NBA players, with sports, with athletes in general, if you're not in the right frame of mind, that can offset your game, right? Completely. And it depends on where I call it different ceilings with players as well. Like we've
Mhm,
got the LeBrons who the ceiling is high. Like there's so much that he can do. Like just an example. And then there
right.
are other players, the ceiling is not necessarily as high. So what would affect them may not affect LeBron, right? Because there's
Wow.
still room for him.
But
So
LeBron can still be affected,
he
right?
can
Our
still be
ceilings are different
affected.
levels, but it's still okay. So as
Exactly.
a mental performance coach, in what way would you come in and help someone, whether it's we're using sports, because obviously we both
Yeah.
love sports, we're
Yeah.
using sports, but even as we said, an executive in the boardroom or just a mom who's trying to get through. I mean, moms, I have close girlfriends who are moms
Yes.
right now and
Oh,
and
it's
they're teachers
so
all of a sudden, homeschool teachers, and they're still
and
doing their full-time jobs.
exactly. And
Right.
cooking and
And
wearing all the hats.
exactly, and not
All
killing
the
anyone, all those
Yes,
things. Right.
managing to hold it together. I
Yeah.
think to deal with the athletes, really, it's getting to the crux of what it is. What is happening. Like we do a deep dive into what's going on in your life. So for
Mhm.
me, it was always about bringing it back to the performance. The performance is the end goal, but we're going to go back and see, is it that you have a subconscious block that happened when you were 10 years old, and so this moment is triggering stuff from that time in your life?
Ah,
Or is it something more immediate where, something more dire is happening? Maybe there's a family illness in the family or something that's going to impact your well being and therefore your performance, right? And the NET work that I do dives deeper into the subconscious blocks.
mhm.
And I don't want to take anything away from talk therapy because I come from a family of those sort of practitioners, but this just helps to go deep in terms of the subconscious and identify the subconscious blocks. So that's what I would really do in terms of trying to help the athlete or the executive or the performer identify and normalize whatever it is that's going on within them so that they can be free to go, okay, this is what's happening. I don't have to stay here. I can now
Mhm.
move and activate and become action oriented to move out of this space. But
I
to,
think yeah, sorry to interrupt. I think one of the things that I wanna make sure everyone catches is that you said it could be something that happened recently as far as what's going on in our minds, some event or something that's causing us to be, quote, unquote, "off our game" that day,
yeah,
or it could be something that happened from childhood or a while ago that's triggering something. I swear I just had this conversation, everyone, with my coach about dating. I'm not
yeah,
gonna take up Ayanna's time talking about that, but I just was like, I think that's from when I was younger and this used to happen. And maybe now that's triggering me to hold myself back in other ways. But it's so
absolutely.
interesting. It's not always immediate.
It's not always immediate. And most often we all
Immediate or even recent.
we've all been through pain. We've
Right.
all had trauma, right? What we do very adeptly and in a really wonderful way in that moment is we figure out a way how to put that trauma aside and
Mhm.
keep it moving, right? What happens though is the trauma doesn't like sit in a corner and like you just mosey on down the road. The trauma goes, okay, I'll be
I'll
here.
be with you.
I'll be
Right.
like right here on your back. And as you move along in life, little things will come and like, you know, sort of trigger the trauma. So
Mhm.
so then when you're in the midst of it, like with you're talking about dating, perfect, right? You're in the midst of it, you want it, you got to pay attention to, I want to do something, but it's not happening. I want to do
Mhm.
something, but I'm not able to actualize it. Why is that? More often than not, it's because there's some subconscious trauma that we've pushed to the side. Most times when I work with people, they're like, oh, it could never be that. No, I haven't thought about that in 20. No, no, no. It's
Right.
exactly that thing, but because the purpose is to not think about it. That's the
Mhm.
actual, right? So it's very interesting. Very
Ooh. Everyone, I'm going to be making an appointment with Ayanna. So
yes.
if Mama needs a husband, we're trying to figure this thing out. I'm like, what is it? Figure it out. No, but it's so true. So that's just an example in all the areas of our lives. So as we talk about here, business, career, and then moms, personal. I mean, we all have these different parts of our lives. So I'm so glad you shared that.
Yeah,
Alyssa, hey Alyssa. Alyssa says so true. Super important to identify the root cause of certain roadblocks.
absolutely.
Yes, and again, just to reiterate what Ayanna said, it might not be something that some. I know. Well, I'll speak for myself again. I have moments, if you have a moment where you're just feeling sad one day or
Yeah.
something feels off, you're not sure why. And my business coach actually taught me to think about, well, what might have happened in the past week or what happened that day, just sort of be
Mhm.
reflective, not
Yeah.
necessarily to blame those things, but just say, oh, it might be that. But I
Yeah.
think it's important what you said, even it might be something even further. Maybe something do you think that we didn't even identify as trauma? Because a lot of us didn't have that language, certainly when we were 5 or 6 years old and
100%.
bullied or whatever.
Yeah. 100%. I've had clients who say, well, this happened, but it didn't bother me really. Right.
Mhm.
And it's like,
Like you said, it can't be that.
it can't be that, but more often than not, because we're adept at pushing it away, we don't even embrace or acknowledge that
Mhm.
this was painful and I'm okay with
Yeah.
like we're having it's great today in Canada, it's Bell Let's Talk Mental Health Day, which is actually really apt
Mm.
and perfect for our
Perfect.
conversation, right? But
Yeah.
it's like just continuing to build on the normalization of these conversations and in that moment where you say, identifying today I feel this way because maybe this happened, and that's okay.
Mhm.
That's okay. Like you feel that way right now, that's
Mhm.
okay, right? Then the next step is, how long am I going to stay in this? What do I need to do? Like, what are the action steps that I will then take, but not before you acknowledge what you've been feeling? Because if you skip that step, this is where you always go back to it, right?
Right.
Go away. You always go back to the pain. You always go back to that moment. So I try to, I mean, sometimes it's like, oh God, it can feel so heavy, but it's essential to move through it. You've got to move through it. It's actually
Mhm.
there for you as part of your journey, as something that you need to work through. Your soul needs to work through, whatever the case is, right?
Your
So,
soul needs to work. Did you
yeah,
hear that? Your soul needs to work through.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah, it's part of our growth, and each of us has a
Right.
different journey, path, challenges, etc., etc.
And as you said, ignoring it doesn't make it go away or not showing up. Ignoring it might actually make it, well, it makes it come back again and again. And if you just keep saying, oh, I'm ignoring that thing as opposed to why do I feel this way? But
Yeah,
would you say once we acknowledge it and understand it, does that mean that it goes away? Or does that just mean that we understand why this certain thing is a trigger for us? Because I think sometimes we're trying to, again, I'll speak for myself. I always talk about how raggedy I am. I'm trying to figure it out. But we're trying to, push it away like, okay, I know
yeah,
this thing, so I'm going to push it away. But I feel like, well, it's still there, but I just understand it differently and can show
yeah.
myself a little bit of grace and
Exactly.
compassion, right?
Exactly. It may still hurt, right? It may
Mhm.
go away. The revelation may cause the disappearance, right, of the
Mm-hmm.
thing. However, it may continue to come up in different instances. And so,
Mm-hmm.
one, it's having the compassion and the grace for yourself in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
Two, it's then assessing, okay, is this coming up and how is it very upsetting, or is it something that I can just sort of go, oh, there it is. Okay.
Right.
I can be mindful about that and accept that it's there. Or is it something that I actually need to reach out, speak to a friend, go see a therapist, right? And talk about it and get it out. Like sometimes we need to get it out and understand it. I always say we've got vision, right? Up until a certain point. There's only so much we can't see in our
Right.
behind us, right? And so this is where a therapist, a coach, a friend comes in. They give you this the sight behind you. They give you the different perspective. They give you the things that you can't see, which can help then to, illuminate something in your mind, help you to grow or help you to let it go.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's no way to really say definitively that it will disappear.
Right.
It certainly is a better place than pretending it doesn't exist,
That's right.
you
And
know?
Michelle, we have so many great comments. Thank you all so much. If you have any questions for Yana, I promise not to take
Yeah,
up all her time with my personal stuff. I'm going to get a personal session.
that's
But
okay.
Michelle Pascal, hi Michelle,
Oh,
said this is so good. I'm trying to
oh,
figure out what my blockage is. Yes.
well,
Let's see. We also have Renetta. I hope I'm pronouncing that. She said sometimes the hurt is too much.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. Renetta, I will say this. The hurt is too much. Um, but once you have support, um, I think I think upon reflection, you will see that not moving through it in the long run will hurt more.
Mhm.
And so we have channels, right? It's like this channel has joy and it has pain. So does this, so does this, so does this. When we block the pain, we're also blocking the joy. So
Mhm.
if we're saying that the hurt is too much, then the conjoining joy cannot show up. And so we're trying to, as human beings, move through life in a way that we are accepting that pain happens and it is part and parcel. Love is painful sometimes. It's a risk. It's tough. You got so much to learn. You joining your life to another person. There's so much, but the absolute joy that you will experience having worked through stuff, I think on the opposite end is worth it in the long run. But you've got to know that it's going to be work and accept it.
Mhm.
Accept it. Right?
Beautiful. Yes, I had to write that down. When we block the pain, we also block the joy.
The same channel.
Same channel.
Same channel.
Michelle also says, I have so much that I want to do, but I pump the brakes every time. And
Well,
I guess, go ahead.
that would be a great discovery to see what it is that's causing you to be incongruent with what you want and what you're doing, right? Like actually going for the thing that you want or not going for the thing that you want. And there's probably fear or something that happened, like a failure, and then you're afraid to sort of get back on the horse again. And it happens, right? And so even the acknowledgement or the awareness that this is what happens to you, Michelle, is a great starting point. It's a great starting point.
Right. The
People are like,
awareness.
what? I'm good. You're like,
Mhm. I'm not good.
as
Or
evidence,
people say, oh, I didn't really want that thing. It's like, but you
yeah,
did. Let's figure out what's stopping you from going for
yeah.
it.
It's all
Mhm.
a way of protecting, right? We're very protective of our hearts. We keep
Mhm.
those steps in, and yeah,
And Samaya, I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Samaya says, normalizing these conversations can ultimately make one feel better to promote a positive outlook.
absolutely. I mean, isn't that what we all want just in general in life? Is just to feel acknowledged and heard and seen and respected and accepted. And
And
this is no
safe.
and
Like
safe.
you said about protecting ourselves, safety.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so this in particular, where there's been so much stigma attached and all these different things, this is what I'm very passionate about. This very passionate about making sure that people understand that it's okay. We all have experienced different challenges in our lives. Some people have experienced anxiety, depression, different things. This does not detract from who you are as a person or what you can bring to the world or the light that you still have within you. It doesn't detract from that. It's just something that you've experienced or you may continue to experience, and that's okay. To still hold space for that, to still hold space for people to know that it's two things can exist at the same time. That can be the truth, and so is your light. Your light hasn't it hasn't disappeared. It's always there, burning within you. Always.
Beautiful. And then we have someone from Facebook here. Oh, oops, I skipped one. Hey, Sherry, you popped up, girl. Sherry said, yes, yes. Important to have mentors and friends in one's corner. They help keep me, us, them morally accountable. Keep your eyes on your goals. We get tripped up. We'll pick ourselves up again and finish the race and win the goal. All right.
Absolutely.
All
Absolutely.
right.
You know what I love about that, Sherry? I love that it's like the acknowledgement that that can happen. You can trip, you can fall, you can get back up, and you can keep going again. And you can just, we're adept as human beings. We can do that, right? And I think the key for me last year with 2020 being as it was for all of us was just do not take your eye off your goal and do not quit, right? You can stop, but don't quit. Just keep going. It'll happen, right?
Tell us more about that. You can stop, but don't quit. Is that, again, that compassion, sort of taking a moment to pause when you need to?
Oh my gosh. This is right. This is so dear to me because this is what this January has been. It was like pummel, pummel, pummel all the way to the end of 2020. And then all of a sudden, you're exhausted. Your body's exhausted. Your mind's exhausted. You can't process. You can't function. And also feeling as entrepreneurs, which I'm sure many of us are, there's that pressure to do and to, keep up and all this stuff. And then I thought back to a couple instances where I took breaks, say performing. And when I got back, everything was still there. I booked gigs. I still did stuff. But it's important to remember that it's not as if you will disappear off the face of the earth if you take care of yourself. If you pause to reset, if you pause to really hone in to your self-care, if you if you just take a moment, it doesn't mean that everything comes to a screeching halt, right? As long as you remember to check back in or, do a little something here and there. But it's essential. If you don't stop from time to time, pause, let's say pause from time to time, burnout is real.
Burnout is real.
Burnout is real. And after a certain point, it becomes harder and harder to recuperate from the burnout. So you want to make sure that you're balancing that all the time, consistently, as much as possible. So that's where I really had to, that was a lesson for me. It's okay to pause. It's okay because also remember what you can't pour from an empty cup.
That's right.
So you've got to stop, refill, replenish, and then you're like you're bright. And
you're brand new. Exactly.
Right? Like, oh, wow.
Why didn't I do this sooner? Right? And then someone on Facebook asked, Ayanna, I'm sorry I can't see what your name is here, but it says, what are some methods one can do to positively move forward? Do you have some suggestions for that?
Well, first and foremost, adding a meditation practice, I find has really, I've seen it in my clients. I've seen it in myself. I've encouraged people in my family to do it. And it's such a long-standing tradition and things to do in, I guess, Eastern practices. And it's becoming more central and popular in our Western society. But meditation, for me, it just kind of stabilizes you. It gets you back to center. It calms you. The more that we practice calmness, the more that we practice anything is the better we get. The more that we worry is the better we get at worrying. The more that we practice being calm is the more easily we can access that state of calm, right? That state of positivity. And I don't mean in that Pollyanna, just stay positive, just stay positive. No, that's not life. Life is not like that. It's an ebb and flow, right? But meditation for me is a place that gets me to a kind of calm, neutral space where you can deal with all the things that life throws at you, right? Um, that being said, there's also when I just said, don't just say everything's great, but mantras, like having mantras around for me was also quite helpful because what starts to happen is your brain starts to really um, just you're able to access that positive place the more that you read those things. Like it starts to assimilate into the way that you think naturally, you
So you
know.
just have them around your home or your office or different
Yeah,
spaces. And I have that just one on my bookshelf, one in the
yeah,
bathroom, just so you
yeah.
just pass it and see it, even if you're not aware of it, it's there.
Exactly, exactly. The
Mhm.
other thing too is, and one of the things that we may get to is about, um, what does it take to be like a high performance, like to really get the most out of yourself. And this kind of applies to this as well. It's so important. Like the basis of my work is really about self love. Starting with yourself, you've got to know who you are, what makes you unique, what makes you special, like what God given gifts were you brought into this world with,
Mhm.
that are so different to anyone else's, so that you can always refer to that sense of self, that positive sense of who you are, even on the days that you don't feel great, even on the days that you don't feel you know special. You can refer to that because those are factual, right? The things about us that think about yourself as a little girl or a little boy, you know that cute little person running around with all their talents and gifts just ready, and slowly life comes and it layers and layers and it shrouds that. It makes us feel small, right? And my work is really to help people ignite that again. It's still burn. It's always like a little flicker flame inside, right? Like it's still just smoldering, but is to really get that to light up within you, right? So that no matter what obstacles come, no matter what negativity comes your way, it's okay to feel like, oh, that didn't feel very good. But at the end of the day, you can counteract that. Learn to counteract that, right? So I think mantras are a great way. Staying positive, move. Um, there's so much evidence to show what movement and exercise does for you, and it really gets serotonin, dopamine, all the feel good chemicals moving, so that it actually shifts us into a place where we can see life differently, we'll perceive things differently, right? And this is all practice. I say this all the time. I'm like, because people will be like, do you have like 10 tips that I can, I'm like,
Do we get this over with and move on, right? Can I do this? It's like they're looking more for steps 1 through
yeah,
10, and then you're done,
yeah.
right?
Can you
Yeah.
give me just like a shot in the arm? It's like, this is
Exactly.
practice. This is a
Right.
daily practice. We're literally shifting. And I always go back to, I'm a neuroscience nerd, but I always go back to the brain and like what we strengthen, the neural pathways in the brain. That's where we go to. That's our default. So we're trying to literally switch years or decades of what we've been practicing into a new norm. And that's not going to happen overnight. That happens with practice. That happens with time. That happens
Mhm.
with effort. And sometimes it feels like, oh my gosh, can we just like fast forward this? No, this
Right,
is
it took you all this time to get here, right? So
exactly.
you're 30 something, that took all those years, but you wanna fix it in, like, 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Exactly. So Michelle says, "Thank you, Ayanna, holding back tears right now."
No, Michelle,
Michelle,
let it
you're gonna
flow.
make us
I'm,
cry.
I'm holding you. I'm holding you, Michelle. I'm holding you. No, don't. I feel like crying is so underrated, unless of
Mhm.
course it's debilitating. But just in terms of like cleansing, Like it's actually a
Mm.
very cleansing, physically, emotionally, spiritually. It's a very I find you feel, you can feel refreshed after, a little clearer after. So
Oh,
know,
I like that.
know, yeah, know that we're holding space for you, Michelle.
That's
You
right, and that's the
have that.
idea. Sometimes I have moments where I'm a Pisces, so I'm sensitive anyway.
Oh,
But you have moments where you feel like, I feel like crying for
Scorpio,
some reason.
so
I
I
feel
get it.
sad. Yeah, whether
Yeah,
you Scorpio, oh,
Scorpio.
exactly.
Yeah,
You feel
sensitive being.
emotional, like, I just need to cleanse, but I like that thinking of it as that way. Maybe I just need to
Yeah,
cleanse.
yeah.
And what you said about movement, so powerful. This weekend during a vision board workshop with
Mhm.
Barbara Bijou, someone I just interviewed recently on here,
Oh, nice.
interviewed her several times.
Yeah.
Going to her workshops in New York for this is my 11th year, I think.
Oh, wow.
But this year she did it virtual, of course, because
Mhm.
of
Yes.
COVID. So it was people all over the world, and there was a segment where we did this dancing
Oh,
ritual. Michelle was there. Michelle, you remember this, right? We did this dancing ritual, and it's funny because just before that, I'm always excited about doing my vision board. It's always a lot of fun. But I had this heaviness for some reason. I didn't know what was
mhm.
going on. And it was perfect timing that day we did the dance. So you're seeing all these people on video in
Mhm.
their living rooms or wherever they are
Yeah.
dancing around. And at the end, Diana, she just had us hold ourselves, and I just started crying. It just
Mm.
all came
How
out. But I think, like
beautiful.
you said, that movement, getting your body, emotion, whatever that looks like for
Yes.
you, whatever
Yes.
movement looks like, but
Yes.
just having that moment of freedom and then just letting it go
Yeah.
and
Letting it
not
go.
judging it. Like, why am I crying? I just like, well, I needed to cry right now.
Exactly. I love that. I love that. Not judging it, just being, just letting it. It's like you moved stuff around, right? The
Yeah.
stuff that
Mhm.
was stuck, figuratively. But it's like you move it around and then you can like release it, let it go.
Right. That's right. So
Yeah.
what is performance anxiety a thing? Like, is that actually something that
Mhm.
is real?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Um, yeah. So performance anxiety differs from like generalized anxiety in that it is specifically incited by the anticipation of having to do a performance, like having to speak in front of people, or even having to have a conversation, maybe with a spouse, or
Mm.
going on stage, giving a speech, being in a competition. It literally elicits that fight or flight physiological reaction in the body, triggering increased heart rate, rapid breathing, muscle tension, different things, sweaty palm, dry mouth, running to the bathroom, like whatever
Right.
that happens, right? Like the body just goes into complete, like, ready. Um, and it brings about fear, it brings about dread, right? And the more, like I've been saying, the more that we think about it, the more amplified it gets. It just multiplies exponentially as we think about it. So, yeah, this is an absolute thing. It sort of differs. It's the same, similar to stage fright in the sense that one is fear and one's anxiety. So the way that you're
Mm.
experiencing it is just a little different, but it essentially gets to that fight or flight place, right? So it's going to elicit the same physiological reaction, but one is like someone being like really afraid, and the other one just being like kind of anxious, right? But they're pretty similar. Yeah, and usually it's brought on by, gosh, a myriad of things. What can go wrong? Will I be good enough? Oh my God, who's going to be there? I'm going to forget. I'm going to mess up. Um, you know, anything that people start to think, and then it just mushrooms out of control, right?
Mm.
And usually, there are several things that you can do to help sort of ward it off. That doesn't mean that it won't happen, right? But you can prepare. It's very simple, for whatever it is that you're doing. You want to know that when you're about to do something, you've done all the preparation. You've scoured everything, all the notes, all the dancing, all the, preparation as an athlete, whatever it is, so that you can confidently say, I have done all that I can do, and there's nothing more that I could have done. And I still fell. I still tripped as I walked.
Right, right.
You
But
know,
it's
it
not because
happens.
you didn't prepare,
Not
right?
because you didn't prepare, right? Make sure
Mhm.
that you're visualizing. Visualization is such a powerful tool. When I was a little dancer, I used to unknowingly, I didn't know this was visualization, but I would learn something. And then because I was sort of obsessing over it, just kind of like go over it, go over it. And then I would find that when I went back the next day, I could do it better. And then
Because
you
you
come to,
visualize yourself doing it over and over.
yeah, you
Okay.
come to learn that actually visualization is um, the part of the brain that lights up when you are doing something also lights up when you're visualizing something. So you're strengthening. So when you come back to do it, you've strengthened it, right? You've become
Mhm.
stronger, even though you weren't physically doing it. So that's also a really powerful thing. The key is to don't visualize a mistake. I've had people
Mm.
say, I know I was visualizing, but then I trip. I'm like, you're
That's
no.
right, right.
This is your own, this is your jurisdiction. It's your
Right.
brain. You get to
Mm.
go, no. Visualize it perfectly. Visualize yourself hitting that note. Visualize yourself winning that race. Visualize yourself giving the best speech to your board members, or whatever it is. Just that is such a powerful tool, and it's yours. Like, it's your moment.
It's like,
um
I love that you said that's your jurisdiction up there.
your
You
jurisdiction.
right, you the
Right.
sheriff up there.
Oh my
Also,
god.
and you mentioned too earlier, this can also apply, when you need to have I hate to say difficult conversation, but necessary
Mhm.
conversation with someone. Could we
Yeah.
also practice visualization in that way? Like, we're gonna have this conversation and completely understand each other, and it's just going to be beautiful after.
Yeah. Well, I think what that does is it helps you to go in feeling confident, right? Because the difference
Mhm,
between anticipating that it's going to go wrong or anticipating that it's going to go right sets the tone for how you then approach the conversation, and it sets
mhm.
the tone for your energy. And if you think it's going to go wrong, then your energy is a little left, and then that person picks it up, and then it's going to go wrong, right?
Right.
So if you go in going, you know what, it's going to go as it will, but I think that it's going to be great. I think we're going to hopefully, well, hope not hopefully, I think we're going to understand each other. I'm going to visualize it going well. I'm going to
Mhm,
visualize, right? Ultimately, we're talking about two individuals. And so there's no real control per se, but all we're talking about is your preparation, the part that you have control over and that you're responsible for.
mhm.
That's all that, yeah.
So, as someone who has been literally is a performer going on an actual stage like Lion
Mhm.
King, very big stages yourself personally, did
Yeah.
you have moments before where I would imagine not stage fright, or I don't know, but
Mhm.
certainly there might have been some anxiety about the performance? And
Mhm.
if you did, what did you do either in that moment or before to prepare yourself for those moments that we can adopt also?
Yes. So I'm going to tell you, Lion King. That's why they say do things when you're young, because when you're young, you tend to be more fearless, right?
Right, just like,
You
"I'm
don't
gonna
know.
play," and just you don't even know how much is riding on it, right?
Oh, and then you get older and you realize. So what happened was, I didn't really experience that when I was in the Lion King. It was sort of always in go mode. But I took some time off, and when I did another show some years later, that's when I started to experience this very strong awareness of like, oh my gosh, those are people watching me. Whoa, like, just having this thing. And so for me, it was more about having my pre-performance routine.
Mhm,
And this can go for any mode, whatever it is that you do. For me, when it came to dance and performing and that kind of thing, it's meditation, it's deep breathing, making
mm,
sure that I'm properly, my instrument is warmed up and ready, making sure that I knew what, again, preparing, practicing, making sure that I was seamless in terms of what I needed to execute. Um, I will say for speeches and talks and things like that, because I'm a mover, I sometimes need to go outside and jump around,
yes.
and then center myself, and then I'm ready to go. And so I realized I'm like, sometimes I don't need that, but sometimes I can feel it's like the nervous energy stuck. So
Mhm.
then I need to,
Yeah.
shake that out. So I would say a big part is meditation, deep breathing. You can do that anytime. Um, Maybe I probably did that in Lion King, maybe right before going on, just sort of close my eyes, center, do some deep breathing, and get yourself ready. Um, yeah, meditation, visualization, preparation. Those are all things that I've been doing for
For
years.
years, right?
Years.
It's so funny. You reminded me when you talked about jumping around, and you see when we started, before I start,
Yeah,
for some reason, I always do a little wiggle because it
yeah,
gets me in like a playful mood. It's
yeah,
random. I didn't realize I did it till I started seeing guests also wiggle. I'm like, oh, am I wiggling again? But
yeah.
also,
Good,
I remember
good.
years ago, this is maybe, oh gosh, this had to be in the 90s, Ayanna. I
Yeah.
was doing an event with Ananda Lewis, who used to be the former host on MTV, and it was for
Mhm,
Essence Magazine at the time.
mhm,
And we were about to go on stage. It was in
mhm,
I think it was in Harlem in front of, it was a bunch of kids too. So she
mhm,
really wanted to pump up her energy. And I had never seen this before, but she started jumping up and down on the side of
mhm.
the stage, like jumping and waving her arms and stuff. And I was thinking, what's going on? Like I'm sitting
Yeah.
there trying to get focused and this is what we have to, but she did, like you said, just, I guess she just wanted to release it all. And then when she went out there, she like bound out onto the stage, like, hi, she has so much energy. And I never forgot that. I was like, oh, okay, that's how you do it if you need to, just bring it up a notch before you
Yes.
go on stage.
Yes. And one thing that I will mention, there is such a thing as I like that notion of being like stimulated and having like
Mhm.
a little bit of that energy and maybe even some nerves. I think some nerves are good too, right?
Mhm.
But there is the opposite end. So you've got like a bell, right? And in the
Mhm.
middle is your optimal amount of like stimulation and, energy that you personally would need. It differs from each person to each
Mhm.
person. Um, but then beyond that can be debilitating. Because if you're too wired and too hyped, like it can sort of push you over the edge. And if you're
Mhm.
under that, then you're not like energized enough,
So
right? So
how do we find that sweet spot?
yeah. I think you can check in. Like if you feel yourself just dragging a bit, it might mean that you need to
A
like,
little. Mhm.
and then you check in again. It's enough. You'll feel it because I think your body starts to buzz in a way like that can
Mhm.
indicate that, I'm a little over jazzed right now and I need to bring it down a bit. Yeah.
So that might be why other people on the opposite end might take quiet time before going on
Exactly.
stage.
Exactly. And it depends. So some people really need to just go in a corner, put their
Mhm.
headphones on, put on some people like to listen to music. Some people need to listen to the songs that they're going to sing or, some Zen sort of thing to keep
Mhm.
them calm. Um, I know for me, about a half hour before a show, I didn't really want to talk much, you know,
Right.
just wanted to get into my zone and some people want to speak right up until they walk on the stage. Everyone
Right, like, "1 second, I'll be back," and then
right,
they go perform.
yeah, right. Sorry. I'll be
I'll be right back. I
but
love it.
it's knowing it's figuring that out, right?
Mhm.
Figuring out what you need in order to feel and sometimes it's a trial and error kind of thing too. It's like, yeah, last time I talked a little too much. I remember doing a performance 2 nights in a row and it was like a very tough point piece, and the first night I was quiet and it went so well, and the second night I got confident, I got cocky,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
Yeah, I got this. And then it didn't go as well. And my
Mm.
teacher, she said, too much talking before. And I was like, yeah, you're right. I wasn't centered. Right. And so that was a gauge for me to kind of take into the rest of my stuff. Like, what do I need? I can chat up to about an hour before. After that, now I need to zone. right?
Right. What do I need? That's an important question
Mm,
for us to
yeah,
ask ourselves. And like you said, that checking in just, and it might be different for everyone. So these are
yeah,
all suggestions that
yeah,
we can all
exactly.
try and then adopt what works for us. So
Yeah,
everyone, please, we only have Ayanna for a few more minutes. First of all, I've asked her, I think, one question for my list of questions
I
that I
know.
wanted to ask because it was, I know you're like
Chatting.
so much for preparation, right? I'm so sorry. But it's all in the line. You have so
All
much
good.
great info to share. But anyone, please let me know if you have any other questions. But Ayanna, I did want to ask you though about comfort zones. So that was something we did mention previously, or I mentioned earlier. I wanted to
Mhm,
ask. We
mhm,
are encouraged often, I'm sure everyone here has heard it, to step outside of our comfort zones, but then we're also told to operate within our zone of genius.
mhm.
So can you talk to us a little bit about what that just what is that? Where should we be? Or is there a should even with it? Is it a
Yeah,
combination?
I love this question. Um, so my feeling is that both things are necessary. So the comfort zone, I feel, plays a role. It's like a practice pad, right? It's a
Mm,
place where you can, you know, repeat things, become excellent, repetitively play them out, become really great at them. This helps you to build confidence, right? The more that we have success is the more that we feel good and we like, okay, that's working, right? And you need success, you need confidence to build your self efficacy. Self efficacy is the unrelenting belief in your ability to do something. So, no matter what
mm,
happens, if you fall down, if you fail once, yeah, but that just happened. I'm gonna do it the next time. Like no one can shake that belief. That's the power of self-efficacy. The problem is if we stay too long in the comfort zone, we become complacent, right?
mm.
And we inhibit growth. You stay exactly as you are. So you grow up to a certain point. At some point, the comfort zone was not the comfort zone. You had to grow into that. Then once you reach there, you practice a bit. And then for me, you got to move again. Right. And so it's learning to know when to stay and when to jump. Right. Sometimes you got to level out. So you continue to practice and strengthen the skills that are already in place. That's comfort zone. Zone of genius to me is such a sweet, juicy spot, right? Because it means that you are trusting yourself to go into some unforeseen place or circumstance, and you're trusting yourself to learn the skills necessary for you to be successful in that space, right? So, high performing individuals are constantly aiming to improve and step into the most phenomenal versions of themselves. That's what makes them great, right? And that means you've got to prepare to step into that zone of genius. The zone of genius is where all your gifts are in use, right? It's where you tap into all your gifts and your talents and you lean into them and they help you in whatever it is that you're doing, right? It's where you stretch. It's where you
Mm.
grow. It's where you become inspired. It's where you are innovative, right? And then it's where you get into that state of flow. Flow is where it's just like, have you ever been doing something and you're like, oh my God, it's been 2 hours? And
Writing is that
like,
for me.
right? And you just go, go, go. And you can feel like when I'm in flow, I get goosebumps. When I'm speaking, I get goosebumps right now. So, so right, that's where you find that ultimate place of inspiration, and you'd be amazed at what you can do. I think one comfort zone's good because you're like you're getting confirmation that what you're good at, you're actually good at. And I think that there's a place for that. And then you got to move. You got to move into that zone of genius. You got to access all your gifts and talents. You got to put them to use and stretch them. And there's no practice for that. There's just trust. There's just trust in yourself. Trust in knowing that if I try this, yeah, I might not be successful right away, but it'll happen, right? Because you've got that belief in yourself, which comes from your comfort zone practice, right? So I think
Mhm.
this is where they tie in. At least that's how I feel about it.
I love that, and it's funny, I was thinking again to take a full circle back to sports, you think about top performers, champion athletes who all of a sudden they might change their coach or bring in someone else, like an additional coach to work on a certain thing, whereas we're thinking, "But you just won the championship, you're at the top of your game, that thing," but there's
Yeah,
always this, "I can grow in this area," or, "I wanna be challenged in a new way," and
yeah,
that kind of thing of being open, as you said, to stretch within your zone of genius.
yeah. Think of, gosh, immediately Kobe Bryant comes to mind.
Me too, me
Right?
too.
And his he's the best, but he's going to be there 2-3 hours before. He's going to have whatever crazy number of
1,000 free
know,
throws,
a
that's
thousand
right.
free throws. And you're thinking, but you're already great. No, you're never satisfied, because that means you're going to slip into a comfort zone and you're going to become complacent, right? And so you're constantly challenging the edge, your edge. You're living on that edge constantly, and then the edge always moves. And that's the
Mhm.
point of genius, is figuring out, what can I do with the gifts, and one of the most painful things for me is to see someone with talent and it not be utilized.
Mhm,
It's
same.
actually a painful. I'm like, do you know how
Do
many
you
people are
understand?
doing, you know? Oh
Right.
my gosh. So that's really where a lot of my work stems from. It's just like figuring out how to help someone actualize all of their gifts and talents. What does that mean? You know?
Yes. And actually, that's a perfect segue into this question. Thank you, Alyssa, for reminding us of this. When and before, and everyone, of course, I'll tell you how to get in touch with Ayanna. We're going to have her links and everything. We'll put that in there so people can find it, but she'll also say it for anyone who's going to listen on audio. But
Mhm.
Alyssa said, when is the right time to bring on a mental performance coach?
Anytime.
Anytime.
Anytime. Certainly, if you feel yourself struggling, but a mental performance coach can just be that guide, that person to help you see, like for me specifically, the blocks that are holding you back. I was
Mhm.
speaking to a client the other day who is a director in a major corporation. And I mean, for all intents and purposes, she made it. Like, she's good, but she's
Mhm.
not completely happy. She's not completely fulfilled. She knows that there are things that are not being utilized, so, or gifts and talents of hers that are not being fully realized. So this is where I would come in, and we would work on figuring what that looks like, figuring out what her zone of genius looks like.
Mhm.
It's easy to become complacent once you've arrived, you know.
And how is it different than, and I know again, we have you just for a couple more minutes, but how is it different than talk therapy? Because people might think, I know we mentioned that sort of earlier, and I know you have a different sort of practice.
Yeah. So unfortunately, with COVID, I'm not able to do as much of the NET, but that would be, we would meet, we would have conversations, and then we use like a muscle testing to see,
Mhm.
literally, it's a physiological way of tapping into what's going on with you
Ah,
psychologically, right? And
mhm.
It's instant.
And
Um,
that's a neuro-emotional technique.
Technique, yeah.
Mhm.
So, and it really lets you know exactly what's happening. And like I said, I come from a family, talk therapies in my family. It's not to diminish that, but it's more to identify quickly the blocks, right? And that's done in person. So, but still, I can carry that into my work that we do on, because of the circumstances, on Zoom and stuff. It's the
So
same
how
principles. Mhm.
Same principle. So tell everyone, how can they work with you? How can they find out more about you? Where should they go to learn more?
Yes. So you can go to ayannasealey.com, and you will see, it's Ayanna Sealey Magic Makers. I am launching my program,
Oh,
the
great.
next iteration of my program, I should say, Dream to Real, where we use the dream method to get you from, that place of, I'm happy, I'm sort of happy, but I really want to be living the fullest life that I could possibly be living in my relationship, in my career, and just life in general, feeling that spark, that fire. So you can go there and you can sign up for the wait list and we can have a conversation. Um, I am offering for anyone who is comes through you a 20% off for
Oh,
for the next week. So yeah, you can go to ayannasealey.com and just sign up on the wait list and we go from there.
thank you so much, Michelle. Not to call you out, girl, but we're lovingly encouraging you. Did you hear that? Go to Ayanna's website and
And
tell her that you
it's a 12-week program, just
for
so
the 12-week
yeah,
program.
12-week
So
program. So we get
12 20% off the 12-week program if you say you came through our conversation here with
yeah,
Ayanna, wherever you saw it. So just say, because we're on all the platforms here.
yeah,
So just tell her, I heard you chatting with Elaine, where Elaine asked all her own personal questions.
yes.
Right.
For me,
Thank you.
I'm sure
Yeah.
someone benefited from the questions that you asked. So
Oh, Sherry asked dream to real, REEL, or real, REAL?
EAL.
REAL. Okay, thanks. Good question, Sherry. Michelle said yes. All right, Michelle, I'm going to be checking in on you. Alyssa said, thank you so much, Elaine and Ayanna. Thank you, Alyssa. I
Thank
appreciate it.
you.
Thank you all so much. Incredible questions. Thank you, Ayanna, and anyone just listening. Ayanna is AYANNA, Sealey, SEALEY.com. And of course,
Yes.
I'll have links everywhere. Ayanna, thank you so
Thank
much. This was
you. So good.
so wonderful. I appreciate you. Hold on for just
Wonderful.
one moment.
Okay.